What is up, you lovely lot? Welcome back to Budget Cars and Bikes and to the second in the series for the videos on the GSX1400 from Suzuki. I'm hoping you've seen the initial kind of walk around we did on the bike when it arrived, but today the weather is glorious here down in Cornwall, so I decided to take it out and take you guys along with me and give you my kind of revisited review and thoughts on this amazing machine. So if you're interested in that, keep watching, we'll get into it. So as I said, I'm hoping you've seen the initial kind of arrival video, as it were, the first walk around. And this is a kind of revisited video series because we've already done a review and thoughts on the GSX1400 we had a couple of years ago. It's one of my most popular videos actually, which just goes to show the love that this bike attracts. It is an amazing machine and I just could not resist getting another one. It's taken me a fair amount of time, truth be known, to find one that met all my needs, shall we say, because most of them are overpriced because the people that tend to own these bikes know what they're worth, won't let them go for silly cheap money. And you know me, I always like to buy a bike that if I don't get on with it I can at least get my money back and hopefully make a couple of quid. So I've been hanging on and hanging on and hanging on, and I've actually let a couple of really good ones go by not being quick enough, and then this one came along and it was the gold wheels. The gold wheels just kind of sold it to me. I just couldn't resist it any longer. So we pulled the trigger, and it's now, oddly enough, when it first arrived was in June, and I don't know if you remember June 2023, but it was glorious, glorious weather. And then July and August it pissed down for 2 months, so it's been sat there doing nothing up until today basically, which is about the 13th of September, I think, something like that. So I figured it was high time we got this big old girl out of the garage and out on the street where she belongs. As I said, I decided to revisit the GSX because I never actually rode the first GSX we had a couple of years ago for more than a few miles. It was bought basically as part of a Part X deal, and I didn't get to enjoy it. It was the wrong time of the year, etc, etc, and I sold it and made a couple of quid and moved on. But I've always kind of thought to myself, you know, I'd really like to actually properly try one because there's nothing that looks quite like the GSX1400 in this blue and white livery. And it's probably one of the bigger bikes you'll ever find on the market, and prices are still very reasonable, I believe, for what is, in my opinion, a future classic, if it's not already a classic really to most people. I mean, obviously this falls in line with the XJR1300, the CB1300, the ZRX1200, bikes like that, you know. And I've always said I've reviewed all of those bikes more than once actually on the channel. Have a look back through the video catalogues and you'll see the CB1300s, the ZRX12 and the XJR1300. Some of them, as I said, we've done two different bikes on. Some of them we've actually reviewed more than once. But it was always the GSX1400 that had me looking when I didn't have a bike in the back garden, as it were. And I was thinking about wasting my money on another bike. It was always the GSX1400 because they're between 4 and 5 grand for a decent one. And I think that offers such amazing value for money. This thing will just burble along all day long. It's just such a joy to ride. We were in 5th gear now, just pooting along 40-50 miles an hour, 2,000 revs, and it'll do this all day long. Yes, you can tour on it. Yes, it's quick. Yes, it looks amazing. Yes, it sounds amazing. But today I got half a tank of fuel and I'm just going to pootle around Cornwall for an hour and just take it easy. I mean, you don't ride a bike we don't buy a bike like this to race around the streets, you know. You can buy a GSX-1000 if you want to get down to that kind of business. This isn't really for that. This is for doing exactly what I'm doing now. But as I said, I have considered touring it quite a lot over the last few years, and this, for a set of, you know, soft luggage over this, you're away. I'm thinking about going up to Bristol over the next couple of weeks, and I could easily I've got a set of throw over rear panniers, you know, leather ones. I can just throw that over the back of this bike. Pair of jeans, pair of socks, couple of pairs of pants. That's it. I can do a weekend in Bristol, easy. You don't need all that hard luggage that I had on the Ducati. Nice, but you don't need it. Plus, of course, if you ride up to somewhere like Bristol, you've got to park the bike up, and there's always that fear that some bugger's going to go, oh, look at that, 10 grand Ducati, we'll have that, stick it in the back of a van, you wake up in the morning, it's not bloody there, is it? I don't think many people would know the attraction and value of a GSX1400 that's 20 years old. They probably just go, oh, it's just an old bike, isn't it? But I feel more comfortable sticking this in an underground car park than I would a 10 grand Ducati, if that makes sense. But so far, yeah, I mean, we're going to do a few videos on this. I think there's a couple of things I want to change. The brakes still aren't perfect, so I've got a master cylinder rebuild kit. I'm going to change the pads out. I want to get rid of, I think I want to get rid of these Oxford heated grips, because I'm not a fan of these bloody great bulbous things, and they're fitted really badly. They're not actually stuck to the bar themselves. They flop about, I don't know if you can see that, but they flop about all over the shop. So I bought a set of Oxford fat grips, and I'm probably going to stick those on there because, as I said, I don't tend to ride in the winter anyway, so it's no biggie for me. And we took the screen off because it had this hideous black screen on there that didn't look right, and it also had a jivvy rear rack thing for mounting a top box on, which is just sacrilege in my opinion. So that was the first thing to come off, and now I think you'll agree it looks a lot better. I have considered doing that little mob that they do where you send your clocks away and they make the backlight on the clocks ice white or blue or all that kind of good stuff, but I don't really think I need to mess about with this bike too much. For me, so far, it's just pretty much perfect the way it is. And the specs on these things are ridiculous. Not so much in the horsepower range. I think it was about 110 horsepower, something like that. So it's not going to rip much apart when it comes to brake horsepower. But it's the torque. If I've got my figures right, the GSX is 126 Newton meters of torque. Now, believe it or not, that's more torque than a Ducati Street Fighter V4S. I know, exactly, right? This 20-year-old Suzuki has more torque than a brand new Street Fighter S from Ducati. I mean, that's just lunacy, isn't it? And that's what it's all about on this big old girl. It's all about the torque, not the brake horsepower. It's just being able to get yourself out of trouble at a flick of a wrist. So obviously we've sold the Ducati Multistrada. I'm hoping you've seen the videos we did on the Multistrada 1260S. It just owed me too much money, guys. I couldn't keep it out there. I hadn't ridden it for a month, and it was, you know, 8-9 grand's worth of bike just sat in the back garden, which is lunacy. So I sold it to a guy up in Liverpool somewhere, I believe. I lost a lot of money on that bike. It was one of the worst decisions I ever made in actually buying that bike, if I'm honest. I loved owning it, but I'm not in the position financially where I can afford to have that kind of money tied up in a motorcycle in the back garden. It's just crazy. I'm comfortable between 3 and 5 grand because it's not life-changing amounts of money in that respect. But it's still going to buy you something very special, as proven with this GSX, which did cost me £4,300. Now, bear in mind that did include delivery down to Cornwall as well, so I would have probably paid 200 quid for that. So I'm calling it £4,100. 20,957 miles, 2004, full MOT, good to go. And the wheels have just been powder coated gold as well. But so far this is exactly what I expected the GSX 1400 to be like riding. It's just big, it's beefy, it's imposing to other users, road users, but not as a rider. This just feels like home. It's just so comfortable. If I'm honest, I could maybe do with being led back just a tad, maybe, you know, literally a centimetre or two. So I'm thinking about getting some risers that push up and back slightly, or just getting some different bars. But I'm not sure. I need to ride it a few times, and winter is coming, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. You know me, if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that generally speaking in the winter I sell all my bikes and I do salvage cars, or I just poodle through the winter because I don't ride bikes in the winter very often. But to be quite honest, I've got no intention of selling this bike. I've waited so long to get another one that I'm not jumping straight into selling this one. It's just too bloody good. And as I said, at that price point of 4,300 quid to my door, I've still got a couple of quid left over from the sale of the Multistrada, so if something else does come along that's, you know, a financial investment to resell, as it were, but needs a bit of work, then great, I've still got that. When it comes to the Multistrada, all my money was tied up in that, so I had no room to kind of invest in anything new that came along, which, you know, was frustrating, as you can imagine. This has obviously got the MTS pipes on here, which sound bloody glorious. We've got the baffles out, and it sounds beautiful, doesn't it? We did a start-up, obviously, on the walk around. Anyway, that is pretty much our first ride out on this bike. I just wanted to give you a little heads up of what she rides like. The brakes are sublime because she's got stainless steel braided hoses on, so as you would expect, the brakes are brilliant, although there is a slight bit of sponginess on the front brake, but as I said, I'm thinking of changing out the pads, bleeding it all through properly, and rebuilding the master cylinder over the winter. I might even take the calipers off and respray them. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but we did that on the first GSX because the brakes were buggered on that, so I just stripped the calipers, redid the seals, repainted them in gold, and they looked brand new basically. So I might do that. So if you're interested in seeing what's going to happen with this bike in terms of anything we're going to add or take away from it, then please do consider subscribing. We try to get a video out every week or so. And as I said, there's going to be a couple of videos on here. We're going to ACF 50 over the winter. As I said, I might try and service the calipers. If you're interested in that, as in a home service for your calipers, then consider subscribing, give the video a thumbs up, a like and a share, and we'll try to get into that over the next few weeks. But for the first ride along on the GSX1400, this has been Budget Cars and Bikes. I hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing, like, share the video if you would. That really helps. It takes you a second, but it means the world to me. We're getting close to 10,000 subscribers, which is just mind-blowing, but obviously I want more. Any questions, any comments, all that kind of good stuff, stick it down below the video, and we'll catch up in a couple of weeks. I'm off for a really nice ride. I mean, look at this. Where else in the world? Brilliant. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Take care, we'll catch up soon.